All right, welcome back to another edition of Modern Mondays here at Guardian Games. We're hanging out in Portland, Oregon. We're Portland Paper. I am Travis Cooper here with a little bit despondent, a little bit sad producer, former Jeskai player in Legacy.
Ian Lunger. Yeah, I'm sad. I'm once upon a time I saw coming, which and it makes sense. But I never got to play my copies because I don't know. It felt bad to play in any case. So I got them and then never played them in a modern event and now they're gone, which is probably a good thing for everybody. Not upset about that.
Well, speaking of bands, we're having the Battle of the Bant here, and we have Bant Snow Control versus Bant Super Friends.
Yeah, Sam playing Oath of Nissa, completely unaffected by the bannings. Unless you're a Pioneer player from many months ago.
Well, it's been about that long since I've sleeved up a Pioneer deck, to be honest.
Yeah. Sam's kind of had this same play style, same sort of Super Friends deck. He just weathers the storm and plays what he wants to play.
Curious if Sam's like found a way to slot in Uro there. It's been interesting to see how it felt like blue-white control was a really strong deck for a minute, but then Oko got printed, and the cost of shifting over to Bant wasn't very high, and Oko is really solid card in a control deck. And Uro's kind of taken that place. Most of these snow control decks are playing 2 to 3 Uros, and just that gives you card draw, life gain, inevitability, which was the thing that the decks were lacking somewhat. So
Thematically, though, I would like to note that Uro is not a friend or super.
no, no, and it looks like Sam resolved the Teferi, which is pretty huge.
Yeah, it's probably going to mean that Jay's Cryptic may end up being used for the bouncing mode, although that feels pretty bad when Sam's already gotten a ton of value in being able to bounce the Oath of Nissa back to hand.
And I think that was a little bit of little risky to minus to bounce the oath just because then it leaves Teferi open to an attack um, to Ice Fang at a certain point, but I guess you're just going to be able to plus them because once Teferi resolves, Jay can't play Ice Fang on Sam's turn. So
Right,
it feels pretty strong to be in a sort of pseudo control mirror, the one sitting behind a Teferi.
definitely.
Oh God.
It's another card that's quite strong in the control mirror. That said, Sam has two white sources currently, so um, oh, but an
We
Oath
have
of
an Oath of
Nissa.
Nissa.
Right.
You forgot
Right,
about
right,
the
right, right.
overpowered Oath of Nissa there.
I like it. I like it in this deck. I think it's just the right power level in this deck.
Oh my gosh. I Attack Cowboy is we should I don't know who they are, but man, if we ever get them in the booth, it's going to be a great pun fest.
Yeah, well, and we also have Urchin in chat. Urchin, we miss you. Come back to the booth when you can.
Oh, I really want to see that Narset come down because that's the thing that Snow Control really wants to do is draw some extra cards.
It feels like we have so many super friends already. It's just so many super friends, Travis.
I love it. Oh man, this feels real hard for Jay to get back into this game because you're gonna have to start doing some weird cryptic lines of like bouncing on your turn. Maybe if you end up with a force of negation, but it looks like Jay is stuck on like two cryptics and a supreme verdict and 2 or 3 path to exiles, 3 path to exiles. Oh, that's kind of not the half of the deck that you want to see in this situation.
That is rough. Yeah, the super friends don't really care about Supreme Verdict at all. Probably because they're the ones making the verdict that was Supreme. Bunch of
uh,
bunch of blue and white planeswalkers sitting in their ivory tower.
this board state brings me such joy right now. We got a planeswalker emblem. We got 3 other different planeswalkers. We're getting ready to have at least a 4th. And Sam doing the thing
Oh
where
my gosh. Do you stay if you're
you got to see.
Jay
I
here?
mean, if you're Jay, you're like, what other planeswalkers can you have? Maybe I'll play it out
Yeah,
until
I
I'm
guess you're
dead.
getting some info, but yeah, there's definitely a point at which just like the hurt of getting beat down is not worth the additional information.
Yeah, if I was on Sam's side, when you first cast that Teferi, you sort of expect it to be countered. You're like assuming it's going to get mana leaked, something, force of negation, but when it doesn't, it's like you have the green light for the rest of the game.
Totally.
All right, we got sideboards here. Looks like for Sam, both these sideboards I'm guessing are going to look pretty similar. For Sam, we have three Veil of Summers, a couple Ashioks, three Dampening Spheres, Dovin's Veto, some more Narset, Mystical Disputes, two Snapcasters on the side, and Engineered Explosives, and a card that's full of glare. Um, Dovin's Veto, good. Mystical Dispute,
Also good.
good. Everything else, maybe I'd bring in the Narset. If you can land a Narset, and so you make Jay's Uros basically be like gain 3 life for 3 mana, they're not that intimidating.
Kind of like the Snapcaster.
I could see the Snapcaster coming in for value, but I'm not sure what you're snapping. Usually that's Path to Exile, so you bring that in as extra removal, but I'm not sure that you're going to want to.
You could do it with the veto or the
Yeah,
mystical dispute or
okay, I can see that. And
Mhm.
it's just a threat that then
Yeah,
can attack some planeswalkers.
right.
It looks like for Jay, we've got three Vela Summers as well, an Aether Gust, two Surgicals, two Mystical Disputes, a Dovin's Veto, Engineer Explosives, some Timely Reinforcements, some Ashioks, and a Celestial Purge.
Hmm.
Do you bring in Dispute in these matchups?
Yeah, I think you probably do. Yeah.
Okay, it's basically it could be a three mana leak at worst if you're playing against a deck that's tapping out for planeswalkers.
Right. I don't know. I think both players could bring in some number of veils. Um, they're probably better on Sam's side as it feels like Sam is trying to more proactively tap out. And the veils tend to work better when you are the one being more proactive. Um, but I think they're defensible on either side.
Now, do you think we just got really lucky with our draws there for Sam and really unlucky with Jay, or do you think it's a little bit indicative of the matchup?
Uh, I think it was probably more lucky and unlucky. I think Jay drew the half of the deck that's was not really useful in that situation. We didn't see like force of negation on the OG Teferi that came down, which might have made quite a big difference. And Jay sitting on a card like Supreme Verdict that's just so poor in the matchup. So I think it's just when you're playing the reactive deck and you draw the wrong half of your reactive deck, the match looks pretty bad.
It feels like the snow control deck has settled into almost defined like 58 out of 60 cards. The number of Uros you play and the different number of planeswalkers are kind of flex. And some people are playing three Force of Negation, some folks are playing two. But yeah, I feel like for removal, snow control in game one has two Supreme Verdicts and four Path to Exiles. You kind of count Ice Fangs as removal, but those actually are decent in the control mirrors. So it seems like Jay just drew, you know, 5 out of the 6 removal cards that don't matter at all in the matchup.
Right. Yeah, because even when one of the sides is kind of outmatched in game one in this matchup, you'll usually see a bit more trading back and forth than that. It pretty much looked like Jay was playing only lands and Sam was just playing spells, which is it doesn't normally look quite that lopsided.
Yeah, I think the advantage that Snow Control would have against Sam's deck is you have in your main deck more counter spells like Force of Negation. I don't think Sam can afford to have that many Force Negations, if any, in the deck because of all the different colored um, cost of cards that he has. Um, and also, when you're trying to resolve a bunch of planeswalkers, counter spells are really good against that type of strategy.
Truth. As far as the Super Friends deck, I know that we have definitely seen Wraths out of the deck. I don't know if they're main or sideboard, but I know we've seen Paths main.
I think there
Uh,
are some amount of Wraths main, and then I think definitely four Path Exile. I don't think you play a deck that has white in it without four Path Exile unless you're a combo deck.
right.
All right, looks like Jay's got a pretty good hand. I see at least one of the Teferi's. I don't know if it's a big one or a little one. A Mystical Dispute, Snapcaster, Force of Negation, Archmage's Charm. So as long as we were able to hit land drops here, and we get an Ice Fang as well. So that's a really good curve. Turn one, Astrolabe frees up your mana. You can just fetch islands from now on, and then have interactive things to do every single turn after that.
Sam is going to be able to jump the curve here, so can potentially jam a 3-mana Planeswalker. Okay, chooses not to. So we're going to see the Quaddle jump onto the battlefield. I almost would have liked to... I kind of like Sam playing the... like just jamming here in this matchup, especially if you're able to jump the curve to 3. I would have liked to see a play from Sam that turn. My guess is that maybe we don't have any 3-mana walkers in hand.
Who I don't know. I think if you have a counter spell, I might just wait. I don't know. These control. I feel like it's basically a control mirror, but Sam is going to have more tap out threats, but post board leaning more on counter spells, and
Do you feel like Sam wins late though? I
I,
mean,
I feel like it's who resolves it to, who can resolve it to Teferi is who is going to win the game probably. And you definitely don't want to tap out, get mana leaked, and have your opponent
okay.
untap and play a Teferi. Then you just lose.
I think that's yeah. I could see that. I guess it depends a lot on the texture of Sam's hand. If Sam has plenty of land drops in hand, then I think it's far more defensible to kind of continue playing Drago. And if Sam, is like out of land drops or something, then I think jamming would make sense. Jay telegraphing kind of needing to get mana here by pathing their own Ice Fang Quaddle.
Yeah, just sort of a pseudo growth spiral there. Draw a card, get a land. Not a sign of strength, but definitely
Okay, and
it
hits the breeding pool.
it's you're not losing card advantage there. And Path to Exile is a pretty mediocre card in the matchup. I think mostly you keep it in because you can tag a Gideon when it is activated into a creature.
Yep. So Jay's holding up Archmage's Charm here. Sam's been very patient so far this match, and I do not expect that to change. I think you may eventually see one of these players jam if they have, like, for example, Veil of Summer backup. So if they've got an open mana to Veil, or if they've got something like 5 mana available for a 3-mana Planeswalker plus Veil plus Mystic Dispute or something like that, I think it might be a good moment to jam.
Yeah, usually the matchup comes down to one big stack fight, and I like if I'm trying to resolve a threat and my opponent hasn't resolved the threat, I like being able to have two counter spells that I can cast along with the threat. And this might be a little bit of bait here.
This definitely looks like bait to me. I think Heart of Kieran's pretty useless without other things on the board. So I think I'm with Jay as far as just letting the heart resolve and keeping the walkers that are going to power the heart off the board.
I really like Archmage's Charm. That card is has impressed me with like you definitely don't want your opponent to draw two cards, but you kind of don't want to waste a counter spell on it. So
So we see both players, now that they've gotten up to 5 mana, they're willing to trade some kind of smaller punches here. moving Uro to the yard is kind of nice to Jay. However, we see that Jay misses the land drop.
Yeah, I think Jay has Mystical Dispute and Veil of Summer in hand, which is kind of nuts. When you're stuck on lands, generally the cards in your hand are pretty good. So,
I feel like now that Sam knows that Jay missed, I feel like you don't jam here if you're Sam because you've just even noted that Jay must have a stacked hand because they're missing land drops.
yeah, this is not going to go well. Well, yeah,
Ooh.
it's a way to get around Dovin's veto. Sam probably felt pretty safe there with the don't be can't be countered
Yep.
clause on Dovin's veto.
Sam with a truly audible sigh.
That might have been game right there.
There is like it should be like veil of air escaping from your lungs as you sigh. All right, I'll shop that one for next podcast.
Uh, yeah. So this is basically what happened. Is Sam tried to resolve a threat with only one counter spell backup, and I'm counting Veil of Summer as the counter spell here, and lost the counter fight. So then Jay's able to resolve a threat. Now being able to hold up like Hardcast, Force of Negation.
And Teferi's real good here.
These,
Sam's just immediately on the back foot at this point.
and these days, I feel like when you're in the control mirror, you're really disincentivized to be the person that tries to play at the thing first because you can't force of negation on your own turn. So you're usually going to lose. If your opponent has a full grip, you're probably going to lose the counter war.
Yeah.
Or I always assume that I am going to.
Yeah. I think it's a fair assumption. And again, I think the big tell in this matchup was that Jay played Uro and missed a land drop. And I feel like at that point I get on Sam's side it's definitely tempting because you see my opponent only has 2 open mana. You know, they have to have I mean you basically have to have exactly Mystical Dispute and Veil to have two mystical disputes, I
I
suppose.
guess you could. Well, you could have force of negation or
Sure.
plus mana leak. There's
Right.
a combination. Oh, this is gross.
But yeah, I think now that Uro enters the fray, it's maybe too tough for Sam to come back from. Jay just picked up another mystical dispute
And usually
and a force of negation.
mystical dispute has a it loses a bit of value in the late game, but when your opponent is trying to resolve like 4 and 5 mana planeswalkers, it stays relevant for quite a while.
Guess we had. Did we have Jay fetch a forest off Flooded Strand? Looks like we're going to next game.
Yeah, I mean that's probably a games rule violation. It didn't really super matter in that game because there was a couple astrolabes that were out there. But yeah, that's the thing that you can't do. You can't always get the basic you want out of any of your fetches.
Yeah, if you want to do it that way, then you got to play Prismatic Vista, and then you can have whatever basic you want. It is kind of you so get used to in modern just being able to fetch whatever. So
Yeah.
you feel like your fetches just kind of cross-reference everything. So you're like, oh, I'll just get like whatever I want with the fetch because the fetch land represents any mana, but not always. Yeah, definitely could have mattered if it was the last basic in the deck.
I know that there was at least two mystical, not mystical disputes, mystic sanctuaries in Jay's deck. So
Could have found a sanctuary, and it definitely wasn't the gatekeeper as far as colored mana, as there were a couple of astrolabes available as well. But certainly worth noting, and we'll keep a close eye on that for
yeah,
game
it's
three.
we're basically this is a regular REL weekly event, we do get a pretty good turnout. We're at about like 40 folks today. Sometimes we're up to like 80, 90 when it gets to be really good weather. But we don't have a judge on the table. And if there's something super egregious, we try to jump out there and let folks know. But if they miss something like that and a turn's passed, that's kind of you missed that. There's no real rewinding, so there's not a fix. You're not going to get disqualified or game loss.
So it looks like Sam's debating a couple of things. It looked like there's a supreme verdict in the leavings that are now going out of the deck.
Yeah, something I really like when you're playing that I've noticed isn't in a lot of the Bant control decks in the sideboard is like a Vendilion click. And as someone that plays a lot of control, I really like that card now in sideboards. There's a lot more control out there that you're likely to play against, and that's such a great way of like baiting your opponent to tap out on the end of their turn to counter it or have some kind of counter war, or you have a pretty big beater that flies over most things.
Yeah, I've had to kind of personally reassess my weighting of Vendilion Click versus Brazen Borrower, as I think I definitely bought into the hype of Borrower when it first came out, and I kind of was thinking, oh, I think I would take Borrower in basically every situation. And as I've kind of played more, which is classic with like Vendilion Clique, I think that card has a lot of kind of hidden power. I've definitely had to reverse some of what I've thought, and I think that there are certainly situations and moments for both cards, which I
Yeah,
think is great.
yeah, I think they're both really strong cards. I like Borrower more in tempo-oriented shells or as a main deck card, but as a sideboard card, like in this type of matchup, click lets you know like how many counter spells your opponent has, or it causes them to tap down low on their turn.
And it can just be game breaking in A plus B combo decks too. When
Yeah,
you play Clique against those, they get their hand all set up, and then you Clique, or they cast the A part of the combo and you take the B part with the Clique. I think, yeah, Jay had a no lander there, so
yeah.
just waiting for Sam to fire off the mulligan first.
Ian's on Cleek, I'm on Click. So if chat wants to chime in, I think Team Click is going to win, but you might get some people in Team Click.
Oh, I actually am fine with either.
Huh.
I think what our folks from across the pond would say, are they Clique or Click? I think they might be Clique.
I don't know. You're more well traveled than I am.
Hmm. Yeah, Click. I think I always reference in high school. You talk about the kids, the clicky kids, and that's how
Yeah.
I think of. And it is the same spelling, but I also listen to a lot of British legacy podcasts. I'm pretty sure they say clique.
Yeah, I come from Kentucky where we have a town like Versailles, but if you say that, everyone's like, "What? Where?" And you say Versailles.
Oh yes, nice. All right. Well, chat did some sleuthing, and there are in fact two ways to say it.
Oh, what sleeves are you using over there,
Looks
Bald
like
Bug Man?
Jay's mulling to 5 here.
So that it would be really backbreaking if you were on the play,
Oh
but
my
when you're
gosh, he
when you're on
just
the
hit.
draw, you'd be at card parity basically, mulliganing to 5. So each player would start with 6 cards. So I feel it's always as bad as it is, like being on the draw, it's a little bit better for the mulligan.
He just hit a no lander again, which is it's so crazy that can still happen with the London Mulligan, that you can end up like Jay's just looking for a playable hand here. He's not being greedy, and we're still ending up on this is going to be a pretty bad 4, I think. There was like an island, a field, 2 field of ruins, and an Uro and a couple other things.
So I think you have to lean on field being relevant here. If Sam's not able to get the Oath of Nissa, Sam is playing a lot of like double green, double blue, double white spells. So there's game to this. Also, Ice Fang's a really good way to get back some cards, and it's not totally over.
Okay, I like the holdings look like.
You got Uro too. So I mean, Uro is just even if your opponent pass it, I think you still kind of get a 3 for 1 in that situation.
Yeah, Uro would be a nice way to get back into this game. The other type of hand that I could see being all right for Jay to keep is something that has a Mystical Dispute and a Veil of Summer. Just basically, because Sam's going to want to maybe try and jam early before the card disadvantage that Jay
Ooh,
has
sweet.
becomes relevant.
Jay picked up a mana leak, so if Sam is trying to take advantage of Jay's lack of cards and just start jamming threats, he's going to at least get stopped on the first one. Unless we hold up something like a Veil Summer. Oh, do you have the Veil? No, you don't. Oh. If I'm Jay in that situation, I've just like felt a huge relief not getting Veil of Summer because that would kind of be total lights out there.
Yep, I do think it is one of those cards that can just end the game, especially if you're on a mole. So there's a second Field of Ruin. There we go. Gonna hit Uro here. We're gonna find the third.
I
Jay
think
kind
we
of
got all the Field of Ruins in the deck.
yeah, last minute kind of concealing that we found another Field of Ruin, realizing, oh yeah, I've already shown this one. So if Sam was quite perceptive, might have seen that there is yet another Field of Ruin.
Okay, Teferi is really good. Hmm.
Teferi's also super solid against Uro.
How so?
Because I actually think if in this situation Jay is kind of locked up on resources in the graveyard, so if Jay is somehow able to get the Uro on board in an attempt to pressure the Teferi, then I think bouncing the Uro is a fine solution.
Yeah, you're gonna have to start using these Field of Ruins. I think we saw a Cryptic in Jay's hand, and it's awkward when you have the Cryptic plus double, triple fields out there.
Right, and you're locked out of using either of the other two fields until Sam plays another non-basic, so further complicating matters.
All right, emblem made.
I think it was a knight.
Oh, make a knight?
Yeah. There we are. I think it's kind of when the two walkers come out, when you get Teferi, just resolving a Teferi is good, but it maybe doesn't end the game, but it feels like the second walker resolving for Sam probably ends the game, as now most of Jay's threats are pretty easily, like if Jay plays walkers, they're dealt with now by the knight allies that Gideon's making.
Yeah, you have to do some weird stuff like, bounce the Teferi and then maybe hope to have a force negation to counter it back when it comes down, etc. There's lines to get out of it, but like when you have Teferi plus other threat, you start falling behind really quickly.
Right. There's the whole multiple walker thing. It becomes too many axes to have to interact on in too short an amount of time. It's one aspect of kind of modern play that has been very interesting. Before, you had to kind of gain that advantage through enchantments. And I guess when I say modern play, I mean post Planeswalkers happening, which I know for some people is basically the entire time they've played Magic. But as somebody who played before Planeswalkers were ever legal, you had to jump through some very strange hoops to kind of get Planeswalker-like effects. If you haven't heard of the card Isochron Scepter, that was oftentimes a way that you could get a Planeswalker type effect, but was very interruptible, and you could very easily get like 2 or 3 for 1 playing that card. So I think Jay just led on Veil of Summer because we're wanting to resolve an Uro. So the what are you reading here, Travis?
Well, I think Jay just wanted to have something on board, and Jay has counterspells in hand. So if Sam even countered that Uro, you kind of have nothing left. So at least now you have something.
Unfortunately, this Teferi is on 3, so if Sam does want to bounce the Uro, the Teferi's gone. We'll kind of get a chance to see, does Sam have removal? If Sam has removal, it definitely feels like the game is over. But if this Uro is able to get an attack in, I guess it just is chumped by a Night Ally. But Uro's gaining other advantages with the card draw, so. Oh, Urchin, my thing was Fire Ice or Accumulated Knowledge, which I know are kind of the staples. So, not super interesting, but definitely fun.
I definitely went down the rabbit hole of like 5 years ago when I was getting into Modern. I actually came to Modern from Legacy. I had tried the Isochron and Scepter in burn deck. Like, but if I can Boros Charm every turn.
It's great in theory. Seems really good until you realize Planeswalkers are that but better.
Are you gonna see another one? I hope so. It'll get mana leaks, but it won't matter. Sam's got lots of mana. Oh. Plus it this time, Sam.
Yeah, I think so. Yep. Sam kind of recognizing we've got pretty overwhelming board state here.
The one thing I've noticed, I'd be curious to ask Sam about this, and when I've played Sam, I've noticed this as well. He tends to just make one knight and then go on animating Gideon, where I'm a little bit more incentivized to just start making an army of knights, just especially when playing against an opponent who could have Path Exile, because it just feels so bad to have like one knight and then your Gideon gets Path. But if you just keep making knights, that's inevitable.
I agree. The only theory, the only thing that came to mind when you were saying that is maybe Sam's used to playing against decks where um, they're like board wiping fairly often, and so once they get their board to a point at which like they're ahead and don't really plan on using, like they'd rather not go even wider than they already are. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, in this situation, like Gideon can't get Path because we have it to ferry out. But even then, I still it can get bounced or something, and I kind of like the army better. But
I definitely feel like I don't want to get Gideon too high of loyalty here. I would rather, like, if we're gonna be plussing it for things, I'd almost rather see the Gideon embleming.
yeah, it looks like we plus the Gideon and then minus with Heart of Kieran, so that's it. Or took a loyalty counter off it with Heart, which is cute.
Yes. Gideon can somehow crew the Heart of Kieran and be piloting it while also attacking on the ground.
Flavor fail. Oh, Narset's kind of a lights out for this deck now.
Every time, man. Every time I look at the lands immediately, I'm like, oh, there's no second blue for that. And then I'm like, Oath of Nissa. Oh, Oath of Nissa.
Oh God.
So much Planeswalker.
So many permanents that aren't lands
I just
that have
don't. I don't want to play anymore if I'm Jay.
That's like the most rules text I think probably that I've
Oh,
seen.
with multiple 2019, the can't draw plus Teferi. It's just like I just don't want to play anymore.
Excuse me, I would like to change the rules of this game we're playing called Magic the Gathering.
But I'm gonna do it in a one-sided way that has only been allowed recently.
I do think Narset is undervalued now. The Bant Snow Control decks aren't playing it, and I think it's really strong in the mirror. And there's a lot of decks that are trying that are have cards that have incidental draw a card tacked onto it, and Narset shutting that down makes those cards significantly worse.
Yeah, I think the 3-drop spot is just such a contentious place for these
Yeah.
decks.
I mean, I guess Uro in general is probably better in snow control maybe than Narset is, just because you're going to end up getting more value over the long run. But if you're playing an Uro into a Narset, it's kind of embarrassing. You basically pay 3 mana to gain 3 life, and then when it comes into play, gain 3 more life, and then it gets
Yeah,
pathed.
yeah. I I think I'm wondering if maybe we'll see less Uro if the graveyard decks start to come back in a more real way, because then you might see more like rest in peace out of these snow control decks, because I feel like they're not really having to deal much with the trade-off of playing Uro currently and having it be kind of a bad explore and then not be able to use the escape part of it. But I think if they were forced into respecting a graveyard heavy meta, it would maybe be much better to see things like Narset or some other 3-drop.
Well, I'm gonna try to go get Sam to come in here if you want to hang out with him and ask him a few questions. Does that seem
Yeah,
like fun? Maybe if Chad has
yeah.
any questions on the deck too.
Yeah, Chad, if y'all have been with us for a while, I'm sure you've seen Sam on this Super Friends deck before. So if anybody has questions for Sam, I know we were talking about maybe how much removal does the deck play beforehand. Um, but yeah, if there's any specific questions, toss them in chat right now, and we will get Sam to answer them. I think we've pretty much always seen uh, Bant. So Sam is sitting down at the moment. We do not have the booth cam today.
Oh, we
That will
don't.
be
That's okay.
that'll be
Oh.
next time. But
My last name has an E. The E goes before the I.
oh no,
Yeah.
do I always make that mistake, or have I
You know, I
just?
don't think so. I think that's a new one.
Okay, all right. Well,
That's
apologies. I'll
it's
fix it for the interview.
truly it's okay. Just for the record.
Yeah, thank you.
So yeah, what's up?
So, we wanted to bring you in and just kind of chat a little bit about that match and a little bit about the deck in general. We've had you on a lot, watched a lot of Bant Super Friends.
It's true.
Um, are you pretty committed to Bant? I want to like start from the top down. So, are you pretty committed to Bant, and like how did we land on Bant as like the place to be for Super Friends?
Well, it's very attractive for a number of reasons. So Oath of Nissa, uh, you saw in that first game, um, really is super glue for the deck. Like you don't have to, you can fetch a lot more basics. You're a lot less soft to things like Blood Moon. Um, it makes it's a cantrip that you saw you can like bounce to fairy and pick it up and draw a card and play it again. It's the kind of gas that something like Opt or I guess in terms of like card selection, um, it kind of does it all. And also playing Noble Hierarch and Birds of Paradise, you get to play your 3 mana planeswalkers that are all very powerful a turn earlier, or get it out. If you play it on turn 3, you can have up like a Veil of Summer or a counter spell or something like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, on the topic of Oath of Nissa, I think a big decision here is: do you play Oath of Nissa or do you play Astrolabe? So, sell me on Oath of Nissa over Astrolabe.
Um. Well, you have to. The magic is play 18 planeswalkers.
Okay.
I mean, Astrolabe is very good. So the only the only non planeswalker spells, I guess, are the oaths themselves, the uh, the dorks, and then there's Path and Wrath, and it's Heart of Kirin and Gideon's, Narset's, Teferi. We've got a big we've got 5 mana Nissas in there, and yeah, it's I'd say Astrolabe does better at fixing your mana like in a pinch.
Hmm.
Um, but it's why like I'd say opt versus ponder, honestly. Like you get to look at 3 cards versus just one. Um, and I don't know, that can be really powerful. Also, the being able to replay it is really strong.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fair. Chat had a question. Why Super Friends over a more traditional control deck? Is it just more fun, or do you think it's straight up better?
Um, well, uh, I am a very big fan of the card Heart of Kirin. It's it's a 2 mana 4/4 with flying and vigilance. What's not to, to love? It's also, there's sweepers in the deck, which I think is kind of counterintuitive with all the dorks in it. But a lot of times when you ramp into your planeswalkers and then you play a sweeper, you get to just then attack for 9 with 2 Gideons. It was mostly, and also I love Gideon. That's it is kind of a decision about pet cards, but I do think like being able to ramp into these, like playing the planeswalkers a turn early, is its own kind of card advantage, right? You get to have, like an extra spell for each one that you play. And as you saw, like some games, once you get to like 3 or 4 in play, it's like that's usually game over.
Yeah, you're pretty untouchable. Yeah, so why are we not seeing Uro out of your deck? I mean, obviously the Oath of Nissa thing could be part of,
Yeah.
that choice is.
Well, I think the deck could play Uro for sure. Mostly it's a $40 card is like the reason, and I think there's actually a spicy tech where you could cast it and crew Heart of Kirin with the sack
Yes.
ability on the stack. I think Uro is really good, and if I had some, I'd probably at least play it in the sideboard. It is just like it's pretty in line with the deck wants to do. Especially, the life gain is relevant. I have an okay time against burn because, Gideon says you can't lose the game, and if you can do that and get another one into play, it's pretty lights out. But I have been losing to mono red just because they're much quicker. So I feel like having the life gain of the card draw Uro is really good. I would probably play some, and you can find it with Oath of Nissa too.
Mm-hmm. That's true.
Yeah.
So we had another question as well. Travis had noted while watching you play that oftentimes when you play the 4-mana Gideon, you make a knight, and then usually you're plussing and swinging with it. And both of us kind of our natural inclination would be to just continually make knights from the Gideon. So what's kind of the thought process there? Obviously, it was protected in this case because you had it to Teferi.
Yeah,
so it
exactly.
Couldn't be pathed.
Right. I mean, that is the main, like, against a deck like Jay's, you especially, like, if he gets to play Uro over and over again, he gets to gain a bunch of life, and I'm just, making more knights. It's the kind, especially if I don't have Teferi in play, I do probably just continue making knights, but putting the pressure on to, like, get his life down so that he has less time to, like, stabilize with more card draw is, I guess, the main reason. No substitute for just getting them dead, I guess.
Fair enough. I think we had one more chat question, then we'll let you go. What's your plan versus the primetime decks?
Path to Exile. 4 Path to Exile. And, there's a main deck, Ashiok, and there's one on the sideboard as well, which, is maybe greedy, but, Ashiok stops a lot of things. And there's, Field of Ruin can kill their lands too. There's a fair amount of interaction. And damping spheres in the sideboard as well. Yeah, Ashiok Dreamrender. Very, very. That card can be lights out itself because if they can't search their library, then they can't combo.
And with
Yeah.
your Field of Ruins, you can potentially keep the Valakut side of the
Oh
deck
yeah.
at bay as well to
Gosh,
keep the Ashioks.
yeah. I've had. Oh yeah. Well, so against that deck, yeah, Ashiok is really good against Valakut. Although, so is it correct that some decks are now with Dryad of the Elysian Grove, they're playing both plants? Yeah.
Yes.
Which, you know, I mean, it's good to be resilient, I guess. You want to have multiple plans. But, yeah. Against Valakut, yeah, definitely. Them not being able to search their library is really good. Yeah, Ashiok's just a very strong card. And you can play it on turn 2 if you have your dork. So,
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for joining me for a little chat in the booth. We just saw Sam play Super Friends
Yeah,
for
thanks,
round
guys.
1 of Modern Mondays.
Yeah.
And we'll let him get back to continuing to Super Friend, and we'll be back with round 2 shortly.